Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cornell Center for Hospitality Research panel discussion. As you've learned from the title, we're going to talk about meetings, conferences, and business travel and the recovery, what's been happening, what companies can do to prepare. We have a distinguished group of panelists, and I want to thank them first for agreeing to be part of this. Thank you to the audience, all of you that have signed in and taken your time to join us today. I want to thank the Center for Hospitality Research for putting this on, for eCornell for helping us stream this, and the School of Hotel Administration, my employer and where I work, for enabling this to happen. What I'd like to do is just very quickly go around the room and have the panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to do it based on the thumbnails I see. And as I introduce each one, please, you can see the names so you know who's who. And we'll get started. Yaron, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Yaron Lifshitz, and I'm the CEO of All Seated. I did my computer science and economics degree at Tel Aviv University, and then came to the US to do my MBA at Carnegie Mellon. Spent over a decade doing investment banking with big companies like Morgan Stanley and Lehman Brothers. And then as all things happened through chance, I got my old friend from Tel Aviv University, Daniel, who's the co-founder of All Seated, brought me to be the CEO, and that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years.
Welcome, Yaron.
Thank you.
Jackie, why don't we go to you next?
Hi, everyone. I am Jacqueline Nunley. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to CHR and eCornell and the Business School for hosting this event to discuss this really important subject in our industry. I am the Senior Industry Advisor for Travel and Hospitality at Salesforce, where I've been about 3 years. And my background includes 22 years of hospitality technology experience. So I'm really happy to be here today with this esteemed panel to see how we can bring some solutions to our market.
Greg, how about we have you go next?
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Greg Land from IBM. I am the global industry leader for aviation, hospitality, and travel. So what that means is my team sells to the industry around the world, including airlines, airports, hotels, resorts, cruise lines, car rental, everybody in the travel space. Prior to IBM, I was 23 years in the industry, much like Jackie, with leadership roles across American Airlines, Sabre, and finally was Senior VP of Global Sales at Wyndham Hotel Group, which of course included the global responsibility for group sales.
Welcome, Jackie, and welcome, Greg. Thank you. Christy, on to you.
Hi, I'm Christy White with the Nolan Group. We are the company that collects all of your meeting room data and then makes it smart and intelligent so that your sales teams can go out and prospect more effectively. I'm a 30-year hospitality veteran. I like to say that I started when I was 12, so there was some child labor involved. But more lately, I'm the public face of Nolan, and I'm the crazy person over in the corner that's been telling hotel salespeople that group is back. Maybe not to the way that we thought it was, but it's back. And if you're not out there prospecting now, you're going to miss the boat in the back half of the year when things get really exciting.
Welcome, Christy. So very briefly, I'm Chekitan Dev. I've been on the faculty of the hotel school for 33 years. Like Christy, I started when I was 12, if you're doing the math. I've been in the hospitality, travel, and tourism business for 42 years. I started in 1979 with a company that you might know called Oberoi. Did some training with them, went on to Europe, where I did a master's degree from French business school and worked at the Georgia Sank, which is now Four Seasons, for a year. And then went to Virginia for my PhD and have been on the faculty of the hotel school since '89. And my work has taken me all over the world, working with all segments of the hospitality, travel, and tourism industry. And my specialty is marketing and branding. And I'm very, very pleased to welcome a distinguished group of panelists to join us today for the discussion that's going to go for about 55 minutes. So let's get started. We've spent quite a bit of time thinking about what we want to talk about. We only have an hour. And so let's sort of start by briefly looking back, and then we can look to today and look forward. And so I'm going to go around the room and maybe ask Greg and Christy to talk about the most important lessons learned during the pandemic. If you were to think back as to, this has been a heck of a year. It's taught us a lot of lessons. We've had to change the way we do business in many ways. But if you were to sort of pick out the 2 or 3 sort of key insights, what would they be? Greg, first you and then Christy.
Sure. Thank you, Checky. I also serve as co-chair for World Travel and Tourism Council for their post-pandemic recovery task force. So we've been looking at this from day one at how to handle this and what could have been done differently. And I think just starting at a very high level, one of the things that I think it really taught everybody across the travel and hospitality industry is we're not as agile as we thought we were. There's been a lot of work being done around agility, especially in the IT areas, but we've also got to be agile and resilient in our businesses as well. The other thing specific to hospitality, airlines prior to the pandemic enjoyed about an 85% plus adoption on their mobile apps, where hotel companies only had about a 25% adoption on their mobile apps. And so as we moved into the pandemic and we saw the importance of mobile interaction and contactless functionality, I think the hotels also got kind of a bit caught off guard that they didn't already have better penetration across the masses with their mobile apps and their contactless abilities. And then thirdly, just the preparedness for all the virtual engagement like this. Hybrid meetings are here to stay for a while. We've all been working virtually. I've probably spoken or participated in about 20 different virtual conferences, meetings, and functions like this. And I think after 18 months, we finally have mastered it. But this was something that also we kind of took for granted that we all could do this well and engage this way. So those are some of the top hits on my list.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Christy?
So I think from my perspective, is we learned that the worst is much worse than we can possibly imagine. And that might seem frighteningly fatalistic, but I believe it underpins the need for companies to be nimble, building on what Greg was saying about being agile. Our industry went from full bore business as usual to almost completely shut down in the space of 2 weeks. And we didn't know how to lock our doors. We didn't know how to staff for, housekeepers that we only needed 2 days a week. And I think technology has actually helped with that and has enabled it. I was at a conference last week where a great company, Hotel Effectiveness, was talking about how they can actually now help hotels budget from a zero payroll and up and begin to build their budgets that way so that they scale more effectively. And I think that's something that's fairly phenomenal. And I hope as we go through this that we learn from this and take some of those lessons forward into the future. Greg, I'm going to pick on you for just a second because you said hybrid is here to stay, and I absolutely believe that. But you also said that we do this well, and we do this horribly. We do this absolutely well if everybody's sitting at home in their yoga pants and tank top, but we have not yet mastered how we're going to do it when half the people are sitting in a room and half the people are sitting at home, and how you give both of those sets of people the same functional experience. We're not there yet, and it's going to take us a little bit longer to get there. But that's my hope, is that we know that we have to be vastly more nimble than we've ever been, and we have to be able to turn on a dime and do it.
Wonderful. Just for the audience's information, when we did our preparation for this webinar, we decided to have 1 or 2 designated hitters for each topic or each question, but that doesn't preclude anybody else from joining in. So, Yaron, Jackie, I'll just leave to say if there's anything you want to add before we go on to our kind of next subject. Feel free to do that. All I have to say and listen to the two of you is, they say in every crisis there's buried an opportunity. I like to think in every crisis there's buried an acronym. So the other day I got a request from somebody that said we need to talk about VUCA. And I go, what is VUCA? They said, well, VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this is sort of the new normal for a lot of companies, is operating under conditions that we are not familiar with and sort of making it up as we go along. Very good. Okay, so let me go on to then the next question or next topic, and that is sort of looking to the present and looking forward. What can hotels and other travel companies do now to prepare for the return of group travel? And this time we'll sort of switch the hitters. Christy, we'll start with you, and then we'll go on to Greg and the others if you have anything to add, please.
So hopefully everything related to hygiene and what your hotels are doing to protect guests, that's already done. If you haven't done that, you've sort of missed that boat, and you're probably going to struggle with it a little bit. However, as group business returns to the market, I hope we don't fall into that passive bucket that we've been in over the last 2 years, where we're just responding to leads and nothing more. And we've become an industry of order takers. We weren't an industry of hunters. So as things return, I hope that we're rebuilding our teams with an eye on hunters, because ultimately a team full of hunters is going to rebuild your pipeline better than any RFP farmer. And while I won't go so far as to say it makes you downturn resistant, well, it won't take you down. It's not going to recession proof you, but it will make you more downturn resistant because you've got people out there that are physically hunting and finding new business, and they have those relationships. We've seen it after every downturn, whether it's been economic or because of international crises. The hotels that recover first are the hotels that had the relationships with their customers and could pick up the phone and have a one-to-one conversation between me and Susie versus me and whatever RFP just dropped in. So if you're not doing that, you're going to hurt yourself. And this is that time to do that complete and utter great reset and learn from our past mistakes.
Thank you, Christy. Greg?
Yeah, another thing that I'll point out, and this will touch on this theme a little bit throughout the hour, is just how we use data and data modeling. And if you look at all the traditional functions around hospitality, whether it's revenue management, forecasting, managing between transient and group relative to your occupancy and your meeting space and things like that, we've got all these models that are built on historical data. And you kind of have to hit a reset button, because going forward, we're going to see the trends evolve very quickly. So you kind of need to rethink your data modeling around every aspect of this: rates, groups, revenue management, everything. But also there's an element of this that you need to start factoring in AI into those analytics. And the reason for that is, based on the consumer research we've done, both across travel and retail, we're seeing the trends move and evolve very quickly. Yep. So you can't wait 6 months to identify a trend. The trend is going to change every 2 weeks. So you've got to be able to learn very quickly. And that's where some of the data modeling that we're doing with our airline and hospitality clients, we're infusing AI capabilities so that you can learn and watch those trends more quickly and learn from those and shift. This gets back to the point of agility and resilience. It's those types of capabilities we need to start baking into all of our processes to have that agility and resilience for the long term. The other thing I'll reference, kind of back to what Christy said about the health and the safety and cleanliness and all of that. One element of that for groups that's going to be unique and different for a while here is testing facilities. And so don't just think US, I'm thinking globally here. As you have larger groups where you have people coming in from all parts of the world, there's still going to be certain areas that require testing on top of vaccine credentials. If you look at the World Travel and Tourism Council, the global summit that they just held in Cancun last month, 2 months ago now, we had 600 people that attended in person. So everybody got tested in their hotel room the day before, so we could create a bit of a bubble around that conference. Now, this is going to change and get a little bit easier as we go forward. You know, we hit 70% here in the US this week for first shots. As other parts of the world catch up to those numbers, that part's going to be able to kind of be relinquished a little bit. But you still need to think about health credentials, testing partners in the local areas, and making sure you set the right expectations for all the participants as to what they need to plan for at the conference.
Terrific. Thank you, Greg. And talking about data, Chris, if you can queue up a couple of, the panelists and I did a little homework to figure out sort of the scope of the problem and what some of the prognostications were based on industry leaders' comments. And we have just 2 charts to show you. One chart essentially talks about the difference between transient recovery and group recovery. So Chris, if you could put that slide up, we can show the audience. And the other one is a quote from Chris Nassetta talking about this idea of when he expects business travel, specifically group travel, to recover. And we'll share that with you as well. And then I have a little bit of a curveball for you. And that is Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, was quoted a few weeks ago saying, I think I want to buy a ranch. And the sentiment was, I want to get my people back together, but I think I want to do it on my own, maybe. And then Barry Sternlicht from SH Hotels, who many of you know, sort of picked up this idea and said, there's some barriers to people coming back in groups, and maybe we need to rethink sort of the entire experience and want to respond to that. Chris, are you with us? Are you there to launch the slides, or I can actually talk them through? Something that you're all pretty familiar with. This was some data from Smith's Travel Research, or CoStar, and my former student and colleague Jan Freitag shared with me that while, group transient RevPAR was up as they were, go ahead. Oh, you did put them up. Oh, good. So Chris, it's not visible to me. So the idea that while transit RevPAR was sort of getting close to 2019 levels, group RevPAR was way behind. And then the Niceta code, as you all saw, basically talks about recovery in 22, 23, maybe even further beyond 24, 25. So back to you, Greg and Christian, also to Yaron and Jackie. So if companies are concerned about getting their people back together, if companies are thinking, the example often given is GE's facility in Cold Spring, they're going to get together, and many companies have that. Are we in danger of permanently losing a big chunk of group business to companies that are concerned about getting their people together and doing it on their own? What are your thoughts on that?
Which one of us do you want to answer?
Anybody. Just jump in. Go ahead, Christy.
No, I actually don't think we do. I think the people out there who are saying that group business is never going to come back, if you examine them closely, they probably have some significant investment in online technology that keeps us all at home. But I think as a species, as we are better together, and it's not the meeting. It's not getting a bunch of people in a room. That's not where great ideas are born. It's someone saying something in a session, raising their hand and saying something, and another person hunting them down at a break and saying, let's grab a drink. I want to expand on that. That's where great ideas are born. And there is no way to facilitate that in a Zoom session. As efficient as we might have come with it, to Greg's point earlier, you can't do that. There's no way to go grab a drink and have that free-form conversation that you get in the space of an in-person meeting. I was at my very first in-person meeting since last year, just last week, at 103 people in the same room. Not a single person in the room ever wore a mask. We were all vaccinated. We had different colored lanyards based upon whether or not we were comfortable with a hug, or it needed to be a fist bump or an elbow bump. And it was the most collegial experience I think I've had in a very long time. And there were at least 5 people that I've got meetings with over the next 2 weeks that I probably wouldn't have gotten those meetings had I not bumped into them and it spurred a conversation. So I think we're going to have a little bit of hesitancy, although I'll tell you, I am vastly more bullish on the back half of this year than Smith Travel is. I think their numbers are going to be off. I think occupancies are going to look a lot better than they think they are, because you're already feeling with the pent-up demand. I flew yesterday for TSA PreCheck in Dallas-Fort Worth, 7 a.m. Monday morning. It was a 22-minute wait to get through, and general boarding was a 47-minute wait. So, people are out there, and there's that demand to get going again, whether it's to a business meeting or to somewhere from a leisure perspective.
Yeah, just to build on that, Christy, I'm with you. I think fourth quarter of this year, we're going to see a lot of things come roaring back. I mean, we saw the GBTA conference, push out to November. The World Aviation Festival in London pushed out from September to December, just to make sure they could have all the procedures in place to be safe. This summer, we're seeing even group sizes for weddings and family events and things like that come back in a big way. So I think fourth quarter, we'll start seeing some of the big conferences and corporate meetings come back. I mean, and speaking from IBM's perspective, I know all of my groups are anxious to get back together with their clients as well as with their colleagues. So we're kind of pacing it based on when our clients reopen their offices. So I've got some of my teams that are already back in with their clients for a month or two now. So we're kind of pacing it based on our clients and letting them set the tone.
Yeah. And then I'll add to that is, we spend an awful lot of time talking about big meetings and needing to have these big meetings have to come back. Well, I'm the keeper of that data, so to speak. Prior to COVID, meetings that exceeded 1,000 people made up less than 5% of the meetings worldwide. 62% of the meetings were 100 people or less. So we don't need those big behemoths to come back to get to a good health place in the industry. We need people to get comfortable meeting in 50 to 100 people. And I think we're there. It's just companies opening up the pocketbooks a little bit and letting people go.
Terrific. Thank you both. Just a housekeeping note for the audience. We're going to try to keep the questions towards the end because most of them or many of them might be answered in the course of the discussion. But be sure to know we will get to those questions at some point to make sure the panelists answer them. So over to Jackie and Yaron, let's dig a little deeper into this and let's get into the weeds. And so the next topic, I guess, would be, your next question would be, how can hospitality firms leverage technology to better serve the meetings, conferences, and business travel markets and increase operational efficiency? Yaron, we'll start with you and go on to Jackie.
Sure.
Please.
So I think that the way we look at that is really, you need to look at each stage of the event lifecycle. I'm not talking about the transient or things like that, but when you look at events specifically, you really need to make sure that across that life cycle, everything is going to be much more virtual, much more remote than what we expected. I hear what Christy is saying. We are talking to a lot of companies that are, corporates and other companies that have slashed their budgets going forward by 50%. And what they're saying, look, we had $100 million of budget to do events and meetings. We do a lot of them. It's going to be 50 million for what we do on the physical side, and the rest is going to be virtual. Why? Because they got the taste of data. We talked about that before, but data is really key, and marketers and event organizers just love data. And that meeting that you're talking about in the hallway cannot be recorded anywhere. Whereas if you do it on a virtual platform, and I met Greg at a virtual event, that data is recorded and can be used by a marketer or an event organizer. I think that data is a huge part of why that is. Obviously, budgets are the same. And that has nothing to do with the fact that as, individuals, we obviously like to give someone a hug and get a drink together. If I look at the kind of what we're seeing in 2022 and beyond, our view is things will not go back to normal the way we think it. I think it's going to be very different across each of those activities. I think sales and marketing will be done primarily remotely. You can expect way less physical traffic into the venue, with people. That means that you're going to have to develop relationships with your potential clients, with prospects. You're going to need to do that online and not over a drink, and not, like you said, Christy, it's not as an inbound that, hey, I'm just going to sit here and look for the inbound. It's going to have to be done very, very differently. I think that, what this industry does so well is that personal connection, is that, the people of the industry are there for that reason. And that will have to, it's going to be less business getting done over cocktails and more over, Salesforce, for example, to keep clients engaged and, having that cadence and interaction. I think personalization is going to be another very large part of it, making sure that you're not just selling, like the inbound example, you're not just selling what you have, the venue or the event. You really need to look at what clients want in an event, and then you need to deliver that to them. That'll be a huge differentiator in the way that we sell events. And then, of course, when we look at, further down the road, the planning stage of an event, that will be done remotely. People are not going to just show up in a venue and do everything, work the details together. It's going to be done remotely, and you need to make sure that happens because the clients will expect you to be ready for that. Excuse me. I think that also during the event, offering the hybrid solutions and connecting the event to the digital world, this is absolutely going to be a make or break for the industry, both as far as an offering and a differentiator, but also as far as a new revenue stream. Connecting your AV to streaming, making sure that you have a virtual event offering or something that you can take a piece of that action. And even after the event, we now have clients, and this is another kind of interesting fact. We now have clients that are basically telling us, look, we want to keep the event, once the event is done, digitally. All the content that we spend so much money producing, all the exploration, we want to keep that even after the event is done for the next year. So, being part of all of that is going to be crucial.
Thank you, Yaron. Let's go to Jackie, and then we'll give the other panelists a chance to respond. Go ahead, Jackie.
Sure. So, while correlation is not causation, the overall meetings and events industry has reported a lot of improved numbers that we've heard, from Christy over, recent months. But, while many brands already have playbooks, as we've heard from Yaron, those looking to really planning and executing events will continue to evolve their technology alongside customer needs. And that's meant to keep meeting professionals identify and tailor solutions that best meet the needs of the event attendees with what to expect. So apart from, low risk hotel contracts, budgets, whether they're expanding or contracting, these are all extremely important factors, but the technology that supports the flexibility that is needed, marketing, services, as these things continue to remain remotely and also, should be available on site, those needs need to be in place to increase operational efficiency. And that's really the most important aspect of, this particular space coming back. So we know that most hospitality brands are, first of all, running much leaner teams at corporate and on property, and that's due to the, shortage of labor right now. So that's going to require brands to have solutions that are going to allow them to do more with less. And whether that's onboarding vendors efficiently to augment their offers, getting those messages out to the market with regards to group events and meetings and conferences. And then, of course, it's also about the visibility, adding the visibility of all the components needed to manage the business from a single source of truth, and to measure those efforts accurately to forecast future business. So I believe that, all of these components are extremely important, regardless of whether it's hybrid for more efficiency or whether it's on property for that human connection. But all of the components that need to be in place should support both of those paths and also should increase the operational efficiency of the challenges that our hotel customers are facing today.
Thank you, Jackie. Christy, Greg, anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, one more area of technology that I think we're going to see roaring back, especially in this space, is mobile technology. Even before the pandemic, we were starting to see all types of mobile functionality be rolled out at the property level, not only guest-facing technology, but also mobile technology for property employees and associates as well. We were just starting to see demand really pick up for mobile applications to better manage group sales. And I think we'll see that pick back up along with mobile capabilities for event planners as well. So that even while you're executing on an event, that the group planners and the event managers and the event planners can even communicate device to device through mobile applications. We have that type of capability in place already for airlines and airport employees. I think we'll see similar ecosystems come together around mobile technology for everybody involved, from group sales, planning, all the way down to the execution of the event as well.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think that's going to become especially important in hotels operationally as they're working with leaner staffs. Most of the hotels are struggling to get people back into their hotels, but you've still got to provide a certain service level to the customers that are physically there. The CEO of Hilton said a few weeks back that he doesn't expect that all services are going to return. I'm one of those people, if they never clean my room again while I'm in the hotel, I am okay with that. But I need an apparatus that I can tell them I need more towels or I need more toiletries brought to the room without me having to pick up a disgusting phone and touch it. I don't care how much you tell me you've cleaned it. I'm not touching that phone. But if there was a way, they need to have a very streamlined way that I can say, I'm in room 305, I need extra towels. And that is serviced very quickly. There's just not a streamlined way to do it. I would actually argue, as a person who doesn't like to have 84,000 apps on her phone, if some crackerjack person could identify an app that works for all major brands that lets me check in online and do all of that without having to have 6 different apps, that person's going to make a fortune.
Terrific. Very helpful. Thank you both. And thank you all for. So let's dig a little deeper into this. One of the questions that we discussed or struggled with is this idea of balancing high tech and high touch. We're known to be a high touch business where we pride ourselves on, meaningful, value added, interactions with our guests. And yet this is a new world and we have to think about sort of rebalancing that mix, high tech and high touch. Moving forward in terms of automation and all the other attendant technologies that you've talked about, let's talk a little bit more about where do you see this going and what's the new mix look like? Yaron, I see you shaking your head. I'll go with you and then we'll just circle around.
Sure. I think high tech and high touch will absolutely have to live together. I think this is really the future. And I think that what, if you kind of break down the question of where technology can make an impact in the, event space, hospitality space, just from a analytical perspective, you can either increase your revenue and try to go after new revenue streams, or you can make it, make your operations more effective and more efficient and, kind of drive to the bottom line. I don't want to touch a lot on the operational side. I think that there's a lot of technologies that can help, anywhere from sales and catering software. Obviously, CRM is a huge one. Engagement platforms, social media, all those things are great. I want to touch on the one that I think right now is just such a huge opportunity, and that's the new revenue stream that's going to be up for grabs for the industry, and that is the hybrid solutions, right? If you're thinking about the overall market that was created, it's not just about, hey, virtual is going to eat my lunch and it's going to basically cut through my budgets and cut through my events. I think it's the other way around. I think that the hospitality industry need to look at those as, hey, instead of doing a 500 people event and charging whatever, $200, $300 per head, I can now do that plus another 5,000 or 50,000 people online. And let's try to mesh the two together. Let's try to look at creative ways, and I think Greg touched on that as well. Let's try to think about those ways where those two worlds live together. And I think that right now there is a massive opportunity where those dollars are up for grabs, because it's not going to be probably just straight virtual events, and it's not going to be straight physical events. There's going to have to be something in between. And I think that, those in the hospitality space that will learn how to, make that happen and connect the digital world into the live event will be the successful ones.
Just a quick comment before I hand it over to Jackie, and that is on a personal level, we were told at Cornell to organize our virtual classes so that we enable both in-person instruction and virtual instruction simultaneously. We had a very hard time figuring that out. Is how do you make sure both parties are served, people that want to, take the class from their dorm rooms, people that want to be in the room, distanced and masked and otherwise. And so that was a tough challenge. Jackie, what's your take on that? How do you balance high tech and high touch?
I think the balance is in, choosing what to automate or understanding what to automate versus what really represents freeing up time to continue to develop that human touch that we, are also well known, in the hospitality industry for. So the automation of activities, helps businesses to improve performance, to improve efficiency. And the way that it does is by reducing errors and improving, quality and speed, and in some cases, achieving those outcomes that go beyond human capabilities. So automation really also contributes to productivity as it's done historically. Now, for hospitality firms or, brands, the performance benefits of automation are relatively clear. But our approach at Salesforce in analyzing the potential impact of automation in this space in hospitality was a focus on individual activities rather than entire occupations in the meeting and event space. So given currently demonstrated, technologies today, very few occupations might be candidates for full automation, but almost every occupation in this space has the partial automation potential. And the key factors that really influence the pace and the extent of its adoption, whether that is technical feasibility, since technology has to be integrated into the already adapted solutions, we're not creating something new here. There's also, the cost of deploying these solutions, and that's going to affect your business case for adoption. There's the labor dynamics, market dynamics that I've spoken about, including supply and demand. You've got the costs of human labor as an alternative to automation. And then, of course, there's the economic benefits overall, which include labor cost savings. And finally, there's those, acceptance, whether it's social, whether it's regulatory, that can affect the rate of adoption of automation, even when deployment makes business sense. So when I look at this space, I think that the benefits outweigh, the cost, both at the level of the individual process and the business, where productivity acceleration right now, post-pandemic, is most needed. So the right automation in this area of group, travel, of meetings, of conferences, of events, is really what is going to free up the time of these leaner teams who are coming back to work now to be able to focus on that human touch and genuine connection with their customers. And that's really how I see it going forward, the ability to be able to innovate in this area, but to really remove those repeatable tasks that will allow these companies to be the most efficient as this group business, as meetings, as conferences come back, whether or not that is, from a hybrid perspective, from an in-person perspective. But I truly believe from just the exchange that we've had on, this particular panel, that's certainly, a subject that we should delve into and see whether that's coming up in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jackie. And before I hand it over to Greg and Chrissy for comment and the others, I want to just reveal to the audience, and thank you all of you that have tuned in, again, 520 plus, wonderful to have you all, I think you're getting the sense that we're working this discussion sort of as what I call an hourglass. We start with the big picture, we get down to sort of the details, and we broaden out of the big picture. I do have one follow-on on a detail level. We're sort of at the belt, the cinch of the hourglass. And I want to just go around the table and ask people to cite their favorite practices. So let's get a little bit more technical and tactical. Some takeaways for the audience. And Chrissy, you mentioned this with the meeting that you had with the color coding. I love that. So examples like that. What are you seeing without telling any tales out of school or revealing any client confidentiality? What are people doing that's working? What are your favorite examples of things that people say, you said to yourself, it's COVID, everybody's hunkered down, and yet we're seeing stuff that just, blew us away. Any favorite examples around the table? Anybody want to jump in?
We saw it with a handful of hotels that, leaned into COVID and recognized that there were going to be first responders that were going to be exposed and were afraid to go home to their families because they didn't want to expose their families. And their employers, he said, okay, we're going to rent out hotels and we're going to put our employees there and put them there. And there were hotels that just were like, no, I don't want to be the COVID hotel. And then there were those smart hotels that just leaned into it and said, bring them in. Come on, let's do this. We saw it in New York City. We saw it in San Francisco. My husband's hotel was one of those. It was the best piece of business he had. At any given time, he had 40 or 50 rooms in the middle of the pandemic. He didn't have to service those rooms. No one went near those rooms. Meals were delivered. And if the person actually tested positive for COVID, the city actually came in and completely cleansed that room, including cleaning all of the air vents and everything. So, he had 2 weeks of federal per diem rate that he did absolutely nothing other than hand off keys. And he didn't even hand off the keys to the guest in the room. He was handing off the keys to a city official that then took those to the guest. Those hotels recognized that there was a need. Some could say it was a little avaristic because they made a lot of money out of it, but they lean into it, did a service for their community. And I think there were too few examples of people that switched very nimbly and recognized that even despite everything that's going on, there's still occupancy to be had. How do I go find that versus waiting for it to walk in the door? And I'd like to see a whole lot more of that as we move forward.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Thank you, Chrissy. Any favorite examples of companies that are doing things, events you've been to that you've heard about that just seem to be really innovating in difficult times? Any other examples?
I think that Salesforce has done a phenomenal job when it comes to upholding the culture, especially as, we all, were remote for more than a year. We're starting to return to the office slowly, but being able to uphold, employee culture while you're remote and you haven't seen your colleagues in goodness knows how many months, is a really important aspect, because we're hearing that, there's been some challenges within the industry, especially when you look at call centers, where you look at the positions or roles where people actually do benefit from having that closeness to a colleague who's sitting next to you, so that you can ask questions, so that you can run strategies with. How do you create that and turn it into something that feels the same way in a virtual environment? And I think that Salesforce has done an incredible job to be able to facilitate that for its employees, and also share it for our customers to be able to adopt some of the cultural practices that we have seen work, so that they can help their businesses thrive and help their employees. So whether that's in the area of health and safety and making sure that communications lines are open, whether it's communities that bring employees together, to continue to build that culture, which really fosters loyalty to a workplace. We've seen it work. We know that it works. I am, a product of that working, and I would love to be able to continue to help our customers be successful in the same way.
Terrific. Thank you for that. Yaron, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would just add to that we worked with, prior to COVID, with a lot of production companies and planners. Obviously, during COVID, they really didn't have any work to do physical events. And so quite a few of them kind of jumped to the virtual side of things, and we kind of outsourced to them the whole kind of design of virtual events on our platform, which is not just a Zoom, it's more of a experience. And so they actually brought amazing ideas and all their, amazing designs and amazing things into the virtual platform, something that, they've never done before. And it was just beautiful to see how, this thing kind of flipped on it just changed very, very quickly, and they were very successful doing that.
And one more comment I'll make, and this is kind of broad in general, but it kind of reflects back on also the mobile use and the high tech, high touch. But one of the things that I've noticed is I really think, some hotel brands really took advantage of the downtime to accelerate the development of their mobile apps, move more to like what Christy described, really take some of the basic requests and basic engagement with the guest, pull that into the mobile app, because as you do bring associates back at the property level, you want to make sure you're bringing back people and positioning them with a skill set and a role where the human contact is needed. And this kind of touches on the high-tech, high-touch balance as well. If you can funnel things through a self-service model like the airlines have been able to do, even for premium guests, you're freeing up associates at the property level for tasks where some emotion needs to be infused into a decision or into a communication. And I think that's back to the high-tech, high-touch balance. Even premium passengers on some of the most elite airlines have been able to drive certain functions to self-service, but that doesn't mean they aren't still meeting you and taking you tail to tail in a Porsche or a Mercedes and really giving you that high touch. So I think there is a balance there, and I'm starting to see hotel brands really find that balance, and I think mobile technology is a big part of that.
Yeah, and I want to kind of expand on that, on the high tech, high touch. They don't have to necessarily be mutually exclusive. Right, if the high tech gets me what I want, then in my world, that was high touch. It's when I've had more failings probably dealing with the person at the front desk than I have dealing with the actual app. I've traveled a lot over the last 7 months, probably more than any of my colleagues and more than most people I know. And I will tell you that in the last 7 months, my experience in hotels dealing with people have literally been the worst of my 30 years in this industry. I checked into one hotel. I won't name them. I'm going to let the guilty remain nameless. I walked up. I had my credit card. I was already checked in because I checked in on their digital app, Greg. I had my credit card and everything in hand, because you still have to put your credit card into the little thing. The clerk never said hello. Welcome to our hotel. Glad to have you here in these depressing times. Handed me my key and pointed to the elevator. never said a word to me in a 3-minute transaction. I would have preferred to have just had an iPad and punched stuff in than to have dealt with someone standing in front of me not saying a word. So, I'm all about high tech. I don't actually like to deal with people. I'm a little bit of an introvert where that's concerned. But on those rare occasions where I'm going to have to, that person better be there. And I don't want to, are you here to check in? No, I just thought I'd come stand in front of your big giant desk for smiles and grins. We have to go back to understanding what high touch means and how to make that a personal interaction. Even if we have the best high tech, if those moments of high touch fail, then you shouldn't have had anything. Might as well close the door.
I think that is such an important point that Christy brings up. And it's really about, also with regards to what Greg said, I think mobility is really the way of the future. And, having an employee stand behind a desk who's having trouble or there's complexity around checking you in, I think those sort of, tasks would be better served by making that part of self-service, by allowing, the actual employee to kind of like be hospitable, such as Christy's example. So it's really removing these complex processes that have existed in the past or innovating around these complex, processes that will allow those employees to return to a hospitable sort of area where they can really, enforce kind of like the loyalty of the brand message, the brand promise, which is what travelers are really looking for.
And Jackie, I'd love to say that there was something complex about my check-in. There wasn't. This was purely a lack of training from whoever runs that particular hotel. And not teaching their employees how to have a conversation. We've raised a generation of people who think screaming into the clown's head and getting to the window and your order right is good service. You can't assume that they can walk into our hotels and know how to treat our guests effectively and hospitably. That is going to have to be trained, and we're failing in that as an industry.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So now to give some credit and shout out to our audience, what I thought I would do is just kind of go through and just summarize a few questions that came from the audience before we leave some time at the end for us to each look into our crystal ball and sort of say, what do you see in the next 3 to 5 years? So the first question comes from Joanna, and she's really talking about, technology glitches, things that are not working well, power outages, disruptive passengers. Several of you talked about agility, this idea that you need to have a much more flexible, adaptive business model. What are you doing about that? If now we're evangelizing that we need to be more high tech, and given some of the representation on the panel, what are some of the safeguards? What are some of the concerns? What are some of the upskilling, training of employees? Sort of that general domain. How do you, convince people that this is the right way to do it?
I mean, I'll start out speaking to to the technology side of that equation.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the work we're getting engaged in right now, and this is airlines, hotels, everybody across travel. You look at the core systems we're working with. Most of them are 30, 40, 50 years old.
And they don't talk to one another. Right.
And they don't talk to one another. That's
yeah. Exactly. And the way they're architected is to that point, they can't speak to each other, and it's because of the architecture. So a lot of the work that we've seen come to us just since December are hospitality and travel providers that the light bulb finally went on, and they realized they've got to modernize applications, they've got to replace core systems, and now's the time to do it. And quite often, we're having to pull in highly trained technical architects to these discussions because it is about re-architecting. So I'm also on the board of Open Travel Alliance, and we are all about driving open standards across the travel industry. And that's the root of this, is if everybody moves to open standards and we modernize these applications where they can talk to one another, even between brands, that's the direction we need to go. That's going to give us the agility and the resilience that we need to pivot quickly, add new functionality quickly, and react to the next crisis and be able to adapt processes around the existing technology.
Thank you, Greg. Go ahead, Yara. Did you want to say something?
Adding to that, many of the clients that are coming to us are coming from the younger generation. This was prior to COVID, and they were all looking for those solutions. Hey, there's got to be a way to do this quickly. There can't be. It's impossible that this solution does not exist. Then they would go up the flagpole and try to get a budget for that, and people would say, oh, we don't have a budget for that. Maybe next year. I think that right now what we're seeing is exactly what Greg is saying. There's now a huge shift in the technology adoption across the hospitality space. And everyone now understands that technology has to be implemented in order to be more productive and to make more money. It's just you cannot not do it anymore.
Well, I mean, all technology ultimately should answer one of three questions. Does it put heads in beds? Does it drive more rate? Does it reduce headcount? And I think for too long, a lot of the tech that's been built has not answered one or more of those questions. And if we can get to that and help hoteliers understand how our product fits one or more of those questions, then we can functionally be a little bit more successful in what we do. The other thing is we have an industry that, God bless us, and I did this for a long time. I spent 17 years in hotels. It is the most risk-adverse industry in the history of forever. And I think every time we have one of these crises like this, they get a little bit less risk-averse. But some of that, to Greg's point, is because we have this legacy technology that doesn't speak to one another. So it's not so much the adversity to accepting the risk of taking on new technology. It's all the pain points they're going to experience to get the new technology to talk to the old technology.
Terrific.
So Greg, I'm with you on the open source technology.
Yeah. Thank you. So the next question comes from Maria, and her question really deals with the uncertainty that the clients are facing with regard to their meetings. We don't know how many, vaccinated, not vaccinated, proof of documentation, how many will show up. How do you help companies deal with the uncertainty? And I'm thinking, again, very tactically, is it about cancellation policies? Is it about accommodation? Is it about change without penalty? How can we help companies that are thinking about getting back with both feet into this space and sort of share some of that risk with them? Any thoughts on that one?
Okay, I'll jump in. I think you hit the first one. Is we're going to have to be a little bit more flexible in how we look at cancellations and attrition. But I also think that planners have to understand that hoteliers still have to make money, and we can't just do away. I mean, right at the beginning of this, meeting planners were like, we don't want any cancellation policies. We don't want any attrition policies. They can't do that. These guys have to make money as well, or the industry's going to go under. The other thing is, I think hoteliers need to do a better job of showing off that they are hosting meetings. There's still some fear that exists out there, but if they see that meetings are having successful, putting a meeting planner in contact with someone that just hosted a very successful and very safe meeting at your hotel, breaking down those silos that existed between groups will often calm some of those fears. And that's just going to take a little bit of time that goes in there. But it's also going to take hoteliers and meeting planners stopping to look at each other as adversaries and starting to look at each other as partners.
Great, thank you. So question from Mona about using sort of a WeWork model, again, using sort of some, industry parallel here, is sort of reimagining events as sort of a hybrid between work and meeting in some interaction with other people. What about new models to reimagine the event experience? And I'll add a couple of little curveballs here as well is, we think about, everybody's talking about leisure travel, blending business and leisure. To what extent do you bring people in, give them some off time? What's it gonna take to bring the market back in sufficient volume to make it worthwhile for all these businesses?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment and then pass it on. But probably as early as February of this year, we had some of the big hotel chains starting to come to us to help them redefine their inventory in their CRS and PMS, because they started seeing demand for people whose offices had closed and have no intentions of reopening, but they need to get out of the house and get some work done for the day. So they were starting to see people who wanted to rent a room for the day just as a workspace. They were seeing groups come together locally, groups of colleagues come together that wanted to rent a conference room for the day and maybe have lunch brought in. So I think to your point, it's almost kind of a work-stay model, but the way that the back to the legacy systems, the way the legacy systems work is you define around room type. Yeah. So they wanted to start looking at how do we start creating these new room types? How do we factor that into our revenue management methodology as well? So they're already starting to see demand for live work space, even locally. If I'm home with 3 kids who still aren't back in school and I just need a quiet place to hammer out a proposal one day, I may want a day pass just to go use a room as a workspace. Or because I'm speaking at a conference, I don't have a quiet space in my home to do something like this. So I think we are going to start seeing some real creativity in how inventory is defined for rooms and for meeting space.
I think that some of the resistance, to add to Greg, some of the resistance that we were seeing in the market is because the solutions that came out to the market very quickly after COVID started all had to be based on technologies that were like this, like Zoom, like things that were not high touch. They were not experience based. They did not include, brand, emotion, any of that into their solutions. And the reason was very simple. They had to be out there very, very quickly. I think the future means that in the future, high-tech companies are going to have to come up with those solutions that bring experiences, that bring that high touch, even if it's remotely and it's not just this environment. I think that will significantly help both the industry and the technology side to work together.
A note for the audience and then for the others to jump in, and I do have a prompt, and that is we may run this is getting very exciting and interesting, I hope, and we're about to look into our crystal balls as Yaron started us off. So we may run a few minutes over, just so you know, and please stay as long as you can, and if not, we'll make sure to get you the recording. So let's use that segue, Yaron, and talk about looking into our crystal ball. What does the future look like, and how do we, to take your ideas, how do we create a better world for people that want to gather? I'll give you a quick personal story. My son had 2 summer internship offers from Fortune 50 companies, and the thing that broke the tie for him was the in-person internship. There was a very well-known company that you all know that I can't mention that offered a very creative and well-organized virtual internship. And he said, I'm so sorry I have to turn you down only because I've been virtual all year and I do need that human contact, something that Christy referred to some time ago. So next 3 to 5 years, what are we looking at? What does the meetings, conferences, business travel business look like in order for it to be in a better place than maybe when we started pre-COVID? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
Sure, I will.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I think that meetings, conferences, and group business travel and events is an essential activity for this industry and beyond it. So I believe that health and safety has forever changed the way we approach this space and how we continue to innovate technologies that are going to allow us to manage uncertainty. I think that hybrid meetings could be the solution, to better accommodate both in-person and virtual attendees, and also to help reach broader audiences, in the space. But by embracing technology to enhance the experience. So, some industry experts have said that the way to go is asynchronous. Now, I would agree with that if we can mitigate the drawbacks using technology. And what excites me the most is that is what is going to open a whole new field of innovation. So in summary, I'm really looking forward to the next 5 years and the doors that it's going to open to be able not only to partner with, some of the great panelists here today, but to also make sure that as business returns to our customers, we're building solutions that support them for their continued success.
Wonderful. Jackie, while you have the mic, I want to put you on the spot for just a second before I hand over to Greg and Christy to finish us off. And that is a question that came from the audience. And I was going to hold it back because it was a question just for you, but I'll ask it now that you raised it. One of the industry's most meetings, conferences, and business travel industry's most celebrated events is Dreamforce. You always are thinking outside the box. You guys are doing some amazing stuff. Full disclosure, I do have a child that works for Salesforce, so I'm a big fan of the company. What does Dreamforce look like, to the extent you can share with us, given the fact that so many businesses rely on an in-person Dreamforce, which may not be possible? What are you looking at for the next meeting and the meetings beyond?
I think that everybody should be sitting in their seats very excited because we will be announcing that soon. So while I can't speak specifically to it, I think that I agree with you. Dreamforce is absolutely amazing. If you haven't been, I'm really hoping that the people on this panel and the information that we've shared and the technologists out there all kind of come together to make sure that eventually we can all meet in person as needed if we want to, but we can also have the same experience should we be attending virtually. Not only with, the option to be able to attend what our focus is, but the option with, some of your odds, tools that allows you to be able to attend an event and be in the first row. So I think that whether we have it in person or whether we have it virtually, I think it's going to be exciting either way because we'll be using the latest and greatest technology and the latest and greatest kind of high touch that is needed in the industry to show how, these meetings and these events and these conferences will change in the future.
Thank you, Jackie. Greg, what does your crystal ball show?
Yeah, so at IBM, we're really kind of pacing all this based on vaccine rates country by country, as well as what our clients are comfortable with. Here in the US, now that we've got vaccination rates up to 70%, we've just announced that we're reopening all of our US offices September 7th. So that's when we'll start bringing back employees to offices. That's also when we'll start being out there traveling. With a company of almost 400,000 employees, we have about 50,000 employees on the road every week, traveling, staying in hotels, and out with clients. And so we'll see our activity pick back up very quickly in the September-October timeframe. I'm already booked to speak at conferences outside the US in November and December. So I do think that we'll start seeing this pick up as we see vaccine rates go up country by country. And I'm really hoping that 2022, as everybody gets comfortable, if we don't see any big setbacks with the vaccine rollouts, yes, there'll be a round of booster shots probably in early 2022 for most people. But I think from what I'm seeing within IBM and from the broad group of clients I work with across travel, I think September, October is going to be a real tipping point to see things start coming back. And even though a lot of us have gotten very comfortable with virtual, just like there's this revenge travel, pent-up demand for leisure, I'm definitely seeing it for business. I'm definitely seeing it for conferences. I think for those countries that are allowed to travel, I think World Aviation Festival in London in December is going to have a record crowd because of the people that are just so anxious to get back and see their colleagues from across the industry.
One quick, thank you for that, Greg. One quick comment before I hand it over to Chris to take us over the finish line, and that is, we had the CEO of Marriott, Tony Capuano, at one of our faculty meetings, and he was talking to let's just, without naming names, we'll name names. We'll say he's talking to a senior partner in McKinsey and saying, what's happening with business travel? And the McKinsey partner said, the days of a partner or an associate flying to Hong Kong for a 1-hour meeting are gone. And Tony said to the guy, well, what if you find out that BCG is doing that? He goes, we're on a plane tomorrow, right? We're getting on that plane or we're getting to Hong Kong for that 1-hour meeting. So to your point about not just the customer-driven, employee-driven, business-driven, but also competition-driven, I think once the marketplace starts to recover, people are going to realize that for either customer reasons or competitor reasons, we need to get out there and get out on the road. Christy, what's your crystal ball show?
So I'm going to take it maybe a little more tactical than everybody else did. The first thing I'm going to say is for most hotels, I think you need to go back and consider where you're baselining for normal for you. We've all got this idea in our head that 2019 should be our baseline. We sold more rooms, drove a higher rate, more revenue than in the history of our tracked industry. So maybe 2019 is not the magical year we need to be baselining against, but 2018 or 2017. So I think you need to start there. But with all that said, I think the back half of this year is going to be stronger than anyone is thinking it's going to be. We hit almost 62% occupancy last week in the United States, higher in some markets. But it's only going to happen for those hotels who are prepared and have started selling versus responding and who aren't falling into bad habits. RFPs are coming back into the marketplace. It's a lot of Smurf stuff that's happening. But if you're falling back into that habit of just let me respond to this RFP and you're not out there knocking on doors, okay, you can't physically knock on doors, but you know what I mean? You're not going to recover as quickly as others. 2022 is going to get most markets frightening close to their peak years. 2023 is still going to be about growth, and 2024 things are going to stabilize. And that's my forecast, and I'm usually pretty frighteningly good at this.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So if I can, for the audience, any sort of takeaway is clearly, innovation is the order of the day, thinking about things in a different way. But the one thing that I think comes through very clearly from all our panelists is the level of enthusiasm and optimism about this industry. We all love this industry. That's why we're engaged with it, and we wish it well. We know it's going to come back strong. It's just a matter of staying the course, and hopefully you've got one or two ideas from the discussion that we had today to be able to take yourself to what I'm calling now a better normal, different from what we had in the past, but in all facets of the business, hopefully a better future. So I wish you all, panelists and also the audience, please be well, stay safe, and see you at the next meeting. Thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you so much.